Here's an interesting conversation starter. Religion should be the most important thing in our life. Prior to 1500 years ago, circa, God didn't exist. Let's examine these words. Actually, to be more accurate, we could say that the essence of religion, religio, should be the most important thing in our lives. Obviously, using English, which actually comes from Latin roots, Anglo-Saxon Germanic roots, a little French thrown in there. The word religio from the 1st century BCE in the Old Latin, which then obviously became Classic Latin in the 3rd century, and this was used during the Roman Empire and later Latin. Religio simply meant moral consciousness, a sense of right, obligation, duties. It was initially more in what we would call today secular context, just being a conscientious person with a sense of right and wrong, with a sense of moral obligation, with a sense of duty. But obviously this became entwined with spirit beings, which the ancient Romans, who obviously had no notion of the word God, they believed in many deities, cultus deorum, immortales, mos maiorum, the way of the ancestors. So Cicero, the great Roman statesman, lawyer, philosopher, scholar, he defined religion then as strict observance to cultus deorum, the cult or the intense devotion to the deities, as well as a sense of right and wrong and moral obligation. In other words, with this understanding of religio, which then became defined as to link or to bind, it was simply our human way of trying to figure out what links us together, what binds us together. Interestingly, this is the root meaning of the word, Sanskrit Hindu word, dharma, dri, to hold, as we're simply trying to figure out what holds us together, what holds relationships together, what holds life together. And also, not coincidentally, the root meaning of the Sanskrit Hindu word yoga, yuj, simply means to yoke, Y-O-K-E. In other words, just like the scientist who is seeking to know, i.e. science, we're just simply as humans trying to figure out what holds us together as individuals, what holds relationships together, what holds families together, what holds communities together, what holds life together. So with this essential meaning of religio, it should then be a compliment to be called a religious person, a religio, one who is seeking to understand what links or what binds us together. In the 1500s, when the word religion itself started to come into use, now it was definitely associated with monastic vows and deities, and obviously now Christianity. This was all in the 1500s. And then obviously, as cultures and societies evolved, there became an understanding of the distinction of different beliefs and different doctrines. So religion now became a natural outcome of what was to be globalization. Now, in ancient times, even the Jews would not have considered themselves a distinct religion. They saw themselves as an ethnic nationality. But today we obviously understand that Judaism is a distinct religion to which anyone can belong. One does not have to be Semitic or a Hebrew to be Jewish. So too, in the Hindu yoga dharma, obviously there was a time when everybody was from India, they were Indian, and they were Hindu. And to a great extent, this still is the case. Many Hindus are Indians, and they either have been born in India or have parents or grandparents that were born in India. But the world is very different today. We live in a global world, and now to be a Hindu, one does not have to be an Indian, or they do not have to be born in India. So way back when, and even today in isolated villages and tribes, there was really no separation between the divine and the secular. However, now in the world that most of us live in, there is a definite distinction between what is secular and what is religious. And it is exactly this separation that allows for religions to be separated from government. This is how religions achieve a non-profit tax-exempt status. And this is, again, a natural evolution of living in a cosmopolitan world. For one to, in a sense, be living in this modern world, but yet their mind is way back when, in other words, not recognizing this split between secular and religious, then they would have to really, if they're honest, give up their tax exemptions and then start entering into the political arena. And also, this would mean that one would really not recognize the specific religions of the world. And sadly, this is still a mindset you can find within what many simply call the Sanatana Dharma, as they seek to create a one universal religion that absorbs everything else. This is simply a fundamentalist universalist attitude. So let's strive for a solution in the times in which we live. Do we keep religio or do we keep religion? Why not both? In our personal life, we can keep, using English again, we can keep religio, understanding what links us together, individually and collectively. But then also, that's in our personal life. When it comes to our community life, now we become religious, and we recognize the specific religions of the world. This is what many Hindus refer to as purva paksha, when you really seek to learn what another person believes from their point of view, not from our point of view, but what they believe. So we can keep both of these terms, and individually and personally, we can be following religio, but then outwardly in the world, we respect religion, we respect the distinctions in the world. This is true unity in diversity. So for us as Hindus, in our personal life, yes, of course, we keep the words dharma, dharma, yuj, yoga, and we see everything as an expression of divinity from our point of view. But then moving through the world, then we recognize Hindu dharma, Hinduism, the Hindu religion, which is a distinct and separate religion from the many other great religions of the world. So, like it or not, English is the chosen world language in which we communicate. And in a sense, this is not really all that bad because it is a secular language. However, it does contain religious terms. One of those is the Christian term God, which we must remember from their point of view. When Christians use the term God, they are referring to a one male, as opposed to goddess, creator, being. Therefore, as Hindus, we should not be using this term. We have our own Sanskrit Hindu terms for the various aspects of divinity. Now, getting back to the title, religion should be the most important thing in our life. Even the non-religious, meaning those who do not adhere to any of the specific religions of the world today, looking at the root meaning religio, if one is simply trying to link their self together, understand their self, their relationships, their community, if they're simply trying to be a moral and upright person, then they are being religious in the sense of religio, without having to belong to one of the great religions of the world. However, at this time in history, most all of us have been influenced by one or another of these great religions, and that is fine, and we should certainly seek to learn about our fellow human beings on the planet. However, when we now take from what are already established religious traditions and then deny those religious traditions, this is simply being disingenuous. For example, today's spurious yoga does exactly that. They're taking everything from the Hindu yoga dharma and actually denying that it's Hindu. Remember, there's a vast difference between being a student and a teacher. It behooves us all to try to be students of life itself and learn what we can about our fellow human beings and their different beliefs and practices, and especially relevantly speaking here about their religions. But when it comes to being a teacher of these established religious traditions, then logic would insist that we become, at the very least, a qualified member of that religion in order to teach it. The trite cliche, I'm spiritual but not religious, is often the mindset of those who want to have their cake and eat it too. In other words, often, quote-unquote, teaching from established religious traditions without recognizing them, and then simply falling back on the caveat, well, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. So remember, we can all recognize the inner spirit within us and seek to understand what is holding us together, in other words, religio, without belonging to any of the great religions of the world. However, if we are practicing something from them, we need to honestly admit that that is what we are doing. And again, like in any other area of life, if we attempt to be a teacher, then we would have to be fully immersed in what are now the recognized religious traditions of the world. So as a Hindu, I would end by saying Namaste, Namaskaram, Vanakkam, Namo, Namaha, Jai Ganesha, Namaste. A final conclusion here. Using English, of course, religion has been around probably since the dawn of time as human beings try to figure out this life and perhaps what happens after physical death. So religion as such will probably always be around with us. So I think it behooves us then to seek to try to understand what this is all about, because regarding the other areas of life, religion really focuses on the incorporeal. That's the very meaning of the word spirit or spiritual, that which is not the body, mind, and emotions, which is the soul, which perhaps is before this physical life, within this physical life, after this physical life is over. These are all things that logical humans ponder and have pondered throughout the ages. So in the Hindu Yoga Dharma, we actually define this soul or spirit, which we call the Atmana, which means not the mind. Same thing, not the mind, not the body, not the emotions. And it is the inner essence that is actually provable. It is this inner essence that we all have of pure energy. We call it Shakti or Sat, pure existence. It is pure light, the inner light, which we Hindus call Jyoti or Chid. And it is the inner feeling of love or bliss, which we Hindus call Ananda. Hence, the definition of the Atmana, soul if you will, to the Hindus is Sat Chit Ananda, this pure existence, pure energy, which is sound energy, light energy. And then heat, which transforms into the human emotion of inner feeling of love and bliss, Sat Chit Ananda, Jyoti, Shakti, Ananda, Shanti, love, light and energy. And without question, anyone with a logical mindset, we'll realize that this is the inner essence of all of us. We have this pure energy, this inner light, and the feeling of lightness also, as opposed to heaviness or depression. And we all experience the non-physical experience of love. So it is this spirit world, and actually the invisible world, that religions have always sought. And this is not so far-fetched, because there are plenty of things that are all around us that we never see: bacteria, viruses. Even in advanced calculus, they work with imaginary numbers. We know that this universe that we see is only such a minute part of what's around us. So religion will always be there. And like any other area of life, life is about division. There are different schools, there are different hobbies, there are different sporting teams. So all of these things in life, including religion, they divide us and they also bring us together. The important point is that in the divisions, are we going to treat those divisions as good sports and use them in a positive way, or are we going to use these divisions in a negative way to hurt our fellow human beings? Therefore, we should recognize both our inner religio experience of pure love, light, and energy, and then respect the outer expressions. Hindus call this the nam and rup, the name and form of life. Then respecting the outer forms of individuals, societies, religions, different aspirations. In this way, we can have a positive harmony of religio and religion, and then religion can become something that is seen to be a complement as one is working ever more towards an understanding of who we are and why we are here and what this life is all about, and perhaps the next life. Have a wonderful day. Namaste.